Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. Given how bad the results in schools are, and the failing generally across the whole of the curriculum, I think that Kate Forbes has come up with not a solution as such, but at least a step in the right direction to raising standards. And that is to actually have the kids not distracted, to have them actually paying attention to the lessons. The lessons themselves are pretty awful. They will need to change. But to get the kids away from being, these distractions is important. And she is proposing a ban on mobile phones, smartphones in schools. I'm not sure it'll work. And I'll give you why once we get into the piece. But I do think it is something that should have been done from day one. It's going to be very hard to implement this now. However, back in the day, it should have been done. It may well be too late. But we'll have a look to see what she's proposing and to see if there is any chance of it happening, or whether there may well even be court cases to stop it happening. Because I think it is, at a point where this just cannot happen. I agree with her sentiments. I think she's 10 years too late. But let's have a look at the story, see what's going on. Here goes. And before we get into it, can I ask that the 65% of my regular viewers who are yet to subscribe, please consider doing so. We'd like to get to 9,000 for Christmas, but also YouTube pushes us down in the algorithm because we are political, and your subscription massively helps. And while you're hitting the subscription button, also hit the like button. That would be fantastic. Anyway, Kate Forbes and her ban on phones. Now, contextually, I think it's a good idea. I think it would remove distraction from classrooms. I think it would certainly cut cyberbullying, where the kids sort of pick each other and message each other and do some awful things. And you've seen children who have actually ended their own lives as a result of cyberbullying. So I think that may reduce that somewhat. I think that needs to be clamped down on. And in principle, it's a good idea. In principle. In practice, however, I don't think it's attainable. But we'll have a look at this and I'll tell you why. Kate Forbes backs a complete ban on phones in schools, as she says she's horrified by teens' social media use. Now, of course, she's also coming from a very sort of strict religious background, where some of the things that kids say on phones would horrify her, really, because of her upbringing, her ethical and moral outlook. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that at all. It's her view. And I think actually, as someone who's not religious at all, you don't need a religion to be ethical. You don't need a religion to be moral. You certainly don't need a religion to be decent. And so I think she's using her religion as a framework for pushing decency. And so that's fine. As long as she doesn't impose the religion on me, I'll happily go along with her ideals. And I think most people would. I don't think, unless you're someone who actively wants to harm people, I don't think there's anything wrong with decency. But I think it is too late now, because the way kids talk on these phones is just awful. And it really is. I have a young niece and I see how she is, and it's like, I can't believe they're doing it. Never would have happened in my day. Yes, I know back in my day the phone was two tins and a piece of string, But it was the principle of it. We would never have done it anyway, different times. I say that, would we have done that? If we had phones, would we have been like that? Who knows? We probably would. This whole thing would have been 30 years ago. 40 years ago. God, am I old? I'm old. Anyway. That's where it is. But she wants to put this ban on. But, like I say, we'll see. So anyway, former SNP leadership candidate Kate Forbes has called for schools to ban mobile phones in the classroom. Her comments come after Nat colleague Jenny Gilruth passed the buck to councils and head teachers, because God forbid Jenny Gilruth does her job. She doesn't want to take responsibility for doing this because she knows it'll be unpopular and people will complain, and she doesn't want the complaints because she's a moral coward. She's like, oh, I don't want this. Let's blame the councils. Blame the councils, not blame me, and push it that way. The buck stops at the top, Jenny. Start doing your job. We know how rubbish you are. We can tell by the PISA results how rubbish you are. We can see how awful the SNP is when it comes to education. Just been changed of someone who used to be a teacher to take control and change it. Fat chance. Too cowardly. Anyway, the Holyrood Education Secretary told MSPs she cannot unilaterally ban devices. Yes. Yes, you can. You have the power. Those schools do not belong to the pupils. They are not open spaces. They belong to the establishment. The rules of schools belong to the establishment. You can close that down tomorrow, but you choose not to because you've got no spine. Anyway, she said, head teachers and councils have the power to bring about a ban. I know a number of schools just now in Scotland are piloting a ban, and I've heard anecdotally that it's working very well. Really? Publish those anecdotes, because I don't believe you. Not only do I not believe you because it makes sense to not believe you because you're SMB, but also I know kids. I know what kids are like, and there's no way that a ban on phones is going to work very well. There's going to be resentment. There's going to be resistance. You're going to have kids jonesing, trying to get on there and send a message. Anyway, Miss Forbes is suggesting that more needs to be done to urgently tackle the problem, as she warned that greater social media use has led to the destruction of self-esteem and the increase of bullying among Scottish children. I mentioned the cyberbullying. It enables hate, elevates anger and vitriol, and platforms dangerous views. It certainly does. That's why, part of the education of children must be a moral education. But when they're just getting bum, 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 bum. And of course the thing is, it gets that, it's Lord of the Flies on the phone, isn't it? And any tiny little snidey thing becomes boom, 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 and it groups up and it groups up and it groups up until eventually it leads to people dying. People are dying because of social media, quite literally. The SNP backbencher, who's widely seen as the brightest mind in the party and future leader, I would suggest, continued. So I have a radical suggestion which may not go down very well. For young people's mental health, I believe more schools should consider banning smartphones at school for younger teenagers. That means a complete ban. Writing in a local Westward column, the MSP for Skye, Lochaber and Badenoch said, in a recent report published by Reform Scotland, revealed that too many young people are persistently absent from school. Yeah, too many absentees, but again, the councils can't send out the old absent truant officer. We used to have truant officers back in my day. Back when dinosaurs ruled the earth, there were truant officers go around, check out if you were ill, really. Go to your home. If you're sitting there on the sofa with a wee water bottle and a blankie over you watching the telly, you were fine. Anyway, the report has generated a lot of interest and attention, largely because the figures don't actually tell us why. So I decided to ask the real experts, teenagers in our schools. I asked them whether the report's findings surprised them and what the figures reveal about teenagers and education. And the teenager experts all agreed on one thing, she said. During and after COVID-19, young people's mental health was worsened. Now, that is the problem. COVID-19 and those lockdowns, done deliberately, harshly, so that Scotland's mammy could appear to be doing something, destroyed an entire generation of children who then learned only to communicate through phone. There was no face-to-face, there was no interactions. And it led to massive mental problems. And these kids will be mentally scarred for life. Now, I would suggest one of the problems you're going to have with trying to ban phones now is you're getting kids from a very young age who have phones. And for them, it is not just a bit of tech that they keep in their pocket. It is literally an extension of their psyche. They cannot live without it. And they're constantly looking on there. And what they're doing, they're looking for justification. It's not even what's being said, it's the fact that they're in the group, that they're getting the messages, that their views are being agreed with, because they have not yet learnt the skill to be disagreed with. And if someone in a group says something that someone else doesn't like, it's like, whoa. And then this festers and grows like a cancer. And disagreement becomes dislike, becomes hate, becomes anger, becomes violence. And this is what's happening, rather than dealing in a group and someone saying something stupid and the other one going, silly wanker kind of thing, and moving on. The usual sort of banter part of growing up, that's all gone. Wiped out because Scotland's mammy decided that that's how it's going to be. But the problem isn't solely there, and it is older. It is the fact that kids have been raised from a young age with these phones, and they feel that they must constantly diatribe all their feelings, or they must constantly publish what they're doing, or pictures of their food, and here's me with my cat. I mean, this is the irony coming from a guy sitting in front of a camera. But I'm only relating the news. I don't tell you the ins and outs of my whole day. You might get the odd glimmer, or I've got to often do something here and there. But you're not getting my entire output. You know, you're getting me responding to things like this. There's a difference. I go out, I meet people, I have a life. I have a life. But we all do. You know, the vast proportion of people watch my channel are 45 and older, predominantly men, must be said. We grew up in an era when there were no smartphones. You had to go out and play with your mates, play football on the green, you know, go down the arcade. Oh, fun fair's in town, let's go up there. You know, things like that. You'd do it. You went out. Then you got to a certain age and you hit about 16, then you'll try to go into a pub, and there was always one or two who would get served and one or two would never get served because they've got little baby faces. I was a baby face. Terrible. Didn't get served properly in a pub without having to show ID till I was about 21. It's terrible, isn't it? Anyway, I've slapped up a bit since, and I wouldn't get away with it anymore. But that's what you did. But nowadays the kids, everything's on the phone, and it's dangerous. They're losing the ability to communicate in a social manner. So I think Kate is right in principle. But you try taking those phones out of those hands, and you've got a Charlton Heston moment, haven't you? You can take the phone out of my cold, dead hand. The kids will resist. And I think at that point, if they tried banning it, there would be people there, parents, it will be parents, looking at their stressed, anxious children and saying, this is wrong, and going to court and saying that the kids have grown up with this so much. This is like, you know when you go on a flight and you've got what you call anxiety dogs, anxiety animals and things like that. It's their anxiety phone. They need this tech. They cannot function without this tech. And it'll take a court case and that'll be it. That'll be it. The flood doors will open and you'll never be able to ban it. It should have been banned day one. It's far too late. Anyway, I shall stop there and I shall come up because it's gone on too long. It was just the principle of it. Like I say, I agree with the principle. Can't ever happen, can it? Far too late. Coming up. I think this is another example of sort of Kate Forbes having a thought, actually doing the research, thinking it's a good idea. And I agree it's a good idea. I think she's a sensible woman. She's bright. She's sane. But I think Kate, on this particular one, whilst the idea is a good idea, I just don't think it's ever going to work. It's a shame. I think it's too late. And that's it. But what do? It's up to the parents at home, of course. They've got to get their kids to be out, put the phone down, sit at a meal, talk to them, talk to people, go out, meet people, do things. Not everything has to revolve around a telephone, you know. Anyway, what do? Us old fogies, we don't know, do we? What do we know? It's not our world anymore, is it? We're inhabiting a world of the young. God, it's going to be awful. Anyway, till next time, stay safe, stay well, and Jesus Christ. I won't say what I was about to say. Just have a good afternoon. Speak to you later. Bye.